Dr. David Bilstrom, thank you so much for coming on Wellness Your Way.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we've already been chatting a little bit, and I can tell the audience they're in for a super treat. Not only is Dr. Bilstrom quadruple board certified, as you heard in the intro, but he also is a really fun, down-to-earth guy with tons of knowledge to share. So I'm excited. Personally, could you tell the audience a little bit about you and what brings you here?
Well, I'm a autoimmune medicine specialist, and my goal, and my wife, who's a licensed clinical social worker and an expert in how like adverse childhood events drive chronic disease and how to undo that, but also how to manage stress, because that's vitally important. So our goal is to change the way autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide, not just in the US, but also the rest of the world, because it is an absolute worldwide problem that's getting bigger and bigger and more common everywhere in the developed world, but also we're seeing a profound increase in the developing nations as well.
Wow. What a small, in quotes, goal to change the way this is treated and managed worldwide. That's incredible. I love people who set big goals, and I applaud you for every bit of work that you're doing on the way there. It seems like you're doing a whole lot of work. You have a new book out as well. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's called The Nurse Practitioner's Guide to Autoimmune Medicine, Reversing and Preventing All Autoimmunity.
Mm.
And I really feel like there has to be somebody in every community that knows how to do this. That's the expert.
Yep.
If we're going to be able to change this, now we also, until we get somebody in every community who knows how to do this, we also want to teach people how to do it themselves.
Yes.
But ideally, if you know the basics, and the book is all about the basics, exactly why people get autoimmune disease, exactly what tests to run, exactly how to interpret the test results, exactly what to do based on the test results, exactly when to retest and make changes. I really think people can do about 70% of this.
Mm.
And, they're just a more of a traditional allopathic Western medicine person. I really think they could do about 70% of this. And until we get some in every community, one of the fights we have is people just don't know that we know where this stuff comes from.
Yes.
And they don't know that we know how to make it go away. And they don't know that we can actually prevent it in their children and future generations already, right? And otherwise, people are just told when they ask, well, how did I get this? Oh, we have no idea how you got this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can I make it go away? We have no idea how do you make it go away. You could have it forever. And it just means that that practitioner doesn't know that we know how it happens. They don't know that we know how to make it go away. Not everybody knows everything. And then the only thing they're offered is medications that have profound downsides, like increase your cancer risk, life-threatening infections. They can actually give you a new autoimmune disease if they're trying to take care of a couple symptoms. Unfortunately, it's just taking care of a couple symptoms of the autoimmune disease process rather than getting at the cause, which allows you actually to then reverse all that's going on in the body and then make the autoimmune disease go away. And then ideally, that is setting you in a really good position not to get new diseases as time goes on.
Oh, I am so fired up because I, like you, believe that we can prevent and reverse and manage these with our food, lifestyle, and all of that. So I'm really excited. And I recognize that for the audience, it might help to take a step backwards so that we can move forward. So could you tell us, first of all, what is an autoimmune condition for people that don't know, and maybe some examples of autoimmune conditions that they might have heard of?
Absolutely. So the immune system is made up of two different parts. One is called the innate immune system, but as it turns out, has to do with inflammation control. And then the adaptive immune system is the part that makes antibodies against specific things that are going to try to hurt us, that ideally is not us. So like if an infection gets in, let's say the common cold, flu, of course, COVID, all this kind of fun stuff, it is, well, that cold virus is not us. And then the adaptive immune system recognizes it's not us, and it makes specific antibodies attacking that cold virus so that we kick it out and you don't end up having a cold for 20 years, right? It's like 3-4 days, did its work, it's out. So, and also cancer. So if one of our cells turns cancerous, that's not us anymore. And that's just something that's not us, that's going to hurt us. So the immune system should jump right in, attack it, get rid of it before it was allowed to grow enough that we ever knew we even had a cancer cell. But when autoimmune disease happens, you've disrupted the immune system so profoundly that the immune system actually starts making antibodies attacking our own body parts. Basically, we're self-destructing, which is never a good idea.
Mhm.
And so, depending on which body part is attacked, we have different names. Now, truly, we'd be better served rather than like, well, here's 120 different kinds of autoimmune disease. It's really just one disease that can attack any body part. And this is
Yes.
why it's so important to reverse the first body part being attacked, because if you don't, then you're just going to get a second one attacked, a third, a fourth, and all this kind of stuff. And so the autoimmune diseases where we're actually making antibodies attacking our own body part. A classic one that people may think about is rheumatoid arthritis, where you
Mhm.
attack your joints, psoriasis, big skin things attacking your skin, multiple sclerosis is you're attacking parts of your brain. Um, but we now know so much more about chronic disease in general. Now we know that so many chronic diseases that we didn't think were autoimmune related actually are. So things like autism, 70% of all autism is one particular autoimmune disease that can
Mm.
be reversed. Heart attacks and strokes, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, thinning of the bones, um, they're all got this autoimmune component to them. And so it really turns out that all disease is really a disruption of the immune system, either the adaptive or the innate immune system, or oftentimes both. And we basically just attack our own body parts. We can't get rid of inflammation, and that's not a good road to go down.
Yes.
But it can be reversed, which is okay.
Okay.
Right.
So, how does this is a big question. It doesn't sound like one, but I know it's a big one. How does the immune system get triggered to be hyperactive and to attack some of these
Yeah.
tissues?
Yeah, so it's a combination of several things. So there's real specific drivers of chronic disease in general, and they happen to be the exact same drivers of autoimmune disease. So typically we say, well, if you're reversing this autoimmune disease, you're really reversing all chronic disease. If you're preventing autoimmune disease, you're really preventing all chronic disease. And so the things that drive a disruption of the immune system are things like vitamin deficiencies, hormone imbalances and deficiencies, toxicity. And unfortunately, we live in a very toxic world with like
Mhm.
heavy metals and pesticides and plastics and flame retardants, yuck, yuck, yuck stuff. Infections. And we now know that all chronic disease has infectious component to it. There's a hormone called cortisol, the stress hormone, that will get thrown off with excessive physical stress, emotional stress, spiritual stress, and then the gut. And the gut is the real big central mechanism. So once the gut gets thrown off, if these other guys are not already thrown off, the gut guarantees that all these guys are going to get thrown off. And then it's that combination that causes actually a loss of the immune system set point.
Mm.
And so the immune system set point is a great example of how the body likes balance, where you don't want to be too high, too low in anything. Blood pressure, blood sugar, there's always a sweet spot right in the middle. So the immune system has this beautiful set point right in the middle. But when you lose that set point, you move away from the both up and down at the same time. So the up overregulated immune system issues are things like all the autoimmune diseases, one disease
Yes.
attack any body part, but things like allergies, asthma, and eczema. And the
Mhm.
downregulated immune system issues are things like colds and flus and infections and recurrent infections, including the sneaky kind of infections that drive chronic disease, and then cancer. So this is where when you get an autoimmune disease, we know you're at such a high risk of getting cancer, and it's so important then to address those drivers of the loss of the set point, bringing people back into the middle, so you get rid of the up stuff and the down stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And then you're really in a great position then to maintain your health the rest of your life, where you don't end up getting things like diabetes and heart attacks and strokes and Alzheimer's and dementias and cancers and anxiety and depressions, because there's really these are the drivers of all chronic disease.
Mm. Amazing information there. And I think in that question, you have answered my next question, but let's make it more explicit. What I'm thinking is toxicity, stress, all of the triggers you mentioned. The question is, why do you think autoimmune conditions are on the rise these days? Maybe 50 years ago, it would have been rare for someone to have these conditions. And now,
Right.
like every single person knows someone with at least one autoimmune condition.
And when you take into consideration all those chronic diseases that turn out to be autoimmune disease that we didn't think, you're like,
Yes.
really probably because 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women. So probably like 1 in 4 women has an autoimmune disease,
Wow.
maybe even more, kind of a thing, or is good to get it. So one of the big ones is environmental toxicity. That's a big
Yeah.
one, why they think there's so much more of this, but also all the things that are sort of inherent in modern life tend to be the drivers of this. So when you think about, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, well, the food that most of us eat, the highly processed food, fast food, truly, you can't even call it food. It's more like
Right.
food-like substances. They have
Yes.
no nutritional value.
Right.
We tend to be a culture of really messed up guts. We do so much
Yeah.
stuff that messes our gut up, and then you can't even digest your food and get the nutrients out, even if you're eating the higher quality nutrients.
Right.
We tend to have really messed up hormone system. Part of that is the environmental toxins that act like hormone, called hormone disruptors, estrogen disruptors. And then when we have a messed up gut, we can't balance hormones. The gut actually has to make a lot of hormones. It won't do it. When the gut is disrupted, then because 80% of the immune system surrounds the gut, the immune system disruption then allows these infections to get in and then start driving chronic disease. And then because the gut's off, even if we try to avoid toxins in the environment, our body makes toxic byproducts, metabolism every day. We got to get rid of those toxic things. When the gut's off, that's the main organ of detoxification, and you can't get rid of them. And you get what they call leaky gut, an intestinal permeability disorder that drives the food sensitivity. So you got to be able to identify the foods that bother people that are creating this inflammation. There's a simple test you can run to do that. That's not your skin testing or the blood work that goes local to the clinic. It's a different kind of test. But that leaky gut also makes it virtually impossible to get rid of toxins from the body. So even if you have the nutrients to run your detox pathways and dump toxins into your gut, they're not going into the toilet when you poop like they're supposed to. They actually recycle back in and accumulate. And this is a real big reason why 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women, is because if women can't detoxify and clear old toxic estrogens from the system,
Yes.
they accumulate over time. And then what women get is what they call estrogen dominance, where you have too much estrogen, not enough progesterone.
Yep.
And that is, when we're trying to teach people, is when you see this estrogen dominance, it runs in families, like every woman may have in the same family, but it shows up differently in every person, which
Yes.
makes it kind of like easy to miss, but when you know what you're looking for. So estrogen dominance, big reason why they think 80% of people that get autoimmune disease are women. Now, typically it'll show up as hormone and menstrual issues, so like bad flows, bad cramps, PMS, ovarian cysts, breast cysts, fibroids, endometriosis, infertility. You see any young woman with that stuff, you're like, oh my goodness, I know where you're going. That is a huge disruptor of the immune system set point. So we know you're going to autoimmune disease and cancer risk, huge cancer risk. Or because estrogen arrests, progesterone calms, it could also show up as anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, these kind of things. So if you ever see a woman with those things, you go, oh, you got estrogen dominance. We go, ooh, we know where you're going. Unfortunately, the treatments I usually use, like, well, let's just put somebody on birth control pills, right, for all the menstrual stuff. But that's an estrogen-like substance that actually makes the estrogen dominance even worse, right? And so this is where we really want to do what's right by women by actually taking care of the cause, and then all those not nice menstrual things and hormone things and insomnia and panic attack things, they all go away. And then we go, that's part of rebalancing this immune system. And now we have done our due diligence to prevent them from getting autoimmune disease, prevent them from getting cancers. If I can throw out a cancer risk number for women with estrogen dominance before menopause,
Yes.
it's startling. And this is why it's so important for us to get the word out. Because when you see this, you know where people are going. Let's take care of it before we get there. So women with estrogen dominance before menopause have a 5.4 times greater risk of getting breast cancer before menopause. So not
Wow.
twice the risk, not 3 times. You think like, you're watching TV in the morning and they got the news ticker below, and this thing was identified as tripling your risk of breast cancer. Everybody, national emergency. Well, we're talking 5.4 times increased risk of breast cancer. And then a 10 times greater risk of malignant neoplasms, malignant cancers, the ones that start one place and then travel to other places, which is a terrible thing to have. 10 times greater risk of malignant neoplasms your whole life.
Wow.
So this is why when you see these things, we really okay, time to get on, know that this is what that means and know that we can fix it and know that by doing that, that we're really preventing autoimmune disease and really preventing cancer as well.
Oh, those are startling statistics that I was not aware of. So thank you for sharing that. Let me recap in a very hopefully simple way for the audience some of what you said because it was so powerful. You said that in many cases, well, actually, let me step back even further. You said that the gut is a major organ of detoxification, and that if our gut is not permeable or semi-permeable the way it's supposed to be, then the things that are supposed to be excreted are excreted appropriately. If not, though, if we have leaky gut or intestinal permeability, which a lot of people have because of
Mhm.
today's society, toxins, vitamin deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies, stress, etc., then some of those toxins, especially estrogen that should be excreted, are recirculated throughout the body. And that recirculating estrogen is what leads to increased risk of breast cancer and other cancers. Is that a
And a huge
summary?
and a huge driver of autoimmune disease. Yep, yep,
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay,
Perfect.
excellent. I am always shocked and saddened when I get clients who have some kind of autoimmune or some expression of autoimmunity. And I'll stop saying autoimmune condition because I understand your point that it's all one condition, but some expression of autoimmunity. And I'll say, okay, did the person who diagnosed you with this talk about your gut? And they're like, no, your gut, my gut, that's not the problem. And I'm like, well, that probably is part of the problem. And they say, well, I don't feel like my gut's off. And I say,
Mhm.
it's not always. Sometimes leaky gut people feel it. They have IBS like symptoms, they have bloating, they have whatever, but it's not always felt in just the way that we're going to the bathroom. It is very common that leaky gut could be an issue without feeling like you're digestively off. Is that true?
Absolutely, and that's one reason why 80% of people with celiac disease are never diagnosed because they have an autoimmune disease that's attacking their gut, their small
Mm,
intestine. In that population, the proteins in wheat, gluten, one of them is like battery acid bad when you consume it.
yeah.
And you think, given that everybody have a terrible gut, but actually 80% of the time they have no gut symptoms, but it's showing up as everything else getting totally whacked,
Yep.
right? And so this is where you can have totally whacked gut. Gut does not show itself as being whacked, but it's just everything else is getting whacked. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Let's go there. Let's talk about gluten and wheat because I always kind of put my hands over my face when I start talking to people about it because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that gluten is such a culprit. But in my personal experience, I haven't had gluten for maybe close to a decade now, and I feel just so much better. It is so powerful to see my experience and my clients' experiences when they get off of it or at least dramatically reduce it. But like I said, people don't always want to hear it. So, can you talk to me about gluten and autoimmunity and anything you want to share there?
Oh, sure. So the wheat proteins, gluten's one of 62 different kinds, inherently create a little bit of inflammation in everybody's gut, just as
Hmm.
how it is. Back when we were a hunter-gatherer society, we didn't cultivate grains. We traveled, moved around as the food supply changed. And then when we, decided to stay, hey, let's get a whole bunch of people staying in the same place, big towns and all this, we had to be able to cultivate food, and that's where wheat came in. So when you eat wheat, you get a little bit of inflammation, but our bodies deal with inflammation every day. You stub
Right,
your toe, it hurts. You don't have a bad toe your whole life. The body takes care of it, gets rid of that
right.
inflammation. But once the gut gets disrupted enough and then it throws off the immune system enough, you actually start self-destructing.
Yeah,
It's like really counterproductive to be consuming something regularly that creates inflammation that
yeah,
your body just can't clear by the next time you eat it. And so that inflammation just grows over time until you go, wow, where's all this inflammation coming through my whole body? And so, if from most people, a little inflammation, no big deal. I eat pasta, bread, but nowadays with the highly processed foods and fast foods, you're probably eating it like 14 times a day,
that's right.
right? And it's also though in shampoos and
Mm,
conditioners and makeup and moisturizing cream and toilet paper. So it's not
Toilet
just that people
paper.
might, yeah, so it's not just
Wow.
people are consuming it like 14 times a day with highly processed food, but you're bathing in it, you're showering in it, you're wiping your butt with it, and then eventually the
Yeah.
body just freaks out, it's just way too much, and then it really starts becoming an issue.
Yeah. So it's like stubbing your toe 100 times a day. Then it's not going to heal. Like you said, if you just did
Yeah,
it once, it's fine. But we're bombarded by this. And even though the mechanism is slightly different, having an impact on your gut with gluten being specific to the zonulin, all of that, we are also repeatedly getting other assaults to our gut. So it's not just gluten, it's the toxins that you suggested, it's processed food, it's artificial food colorings, all of that kind of stuff. Now we're stubbing our toe 1,000 times a day or two
yeah,
thousand times a day instead of just that once. So it really is this accumulation of inflammatory triggers that is causing so much damage.
absolutely, and this is where, prevention is so important because, it is so challenging to stay healthy nowadays. A couple generations ago, you can do everything wrong. Drink too much, smoke too much, you're 85 years old. You're like, hey, maybe I should stop eating fried food every day. Maybe this exercise is something I should try. Nowadays, and you see it with kids so much, is you're trying to do everything right. And
Yeah.
every other kid's got ADD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, developmental delays, asthmas, peanut allergies, gluten intolerances. So this is where, like, prevention is so important, but we tend to make prevention either very vague, well,
Mm.
how do you do this? Or we don't tell people like the real big way to prevent stuff, because really the body's so smart and so good at healing and staying healthy that if you know what you got to do, it's actually very easy to prevent stuff. Like, if I can give it a prevention of type 1 diabetes example,
Please.
please. So this is where we have so much more knowledge than typically gets used in everyday practice, but it all is out there. So here's this great study out of northern Finland, where every kid born in northern Finland in 1966 was followed for 31 years, all the way to 1997. And what
Wow.
they did is they said, okay, so a bunch of the kids, we're going to give them 2,000 IU of vitamin D every day first year of life, which is actually just a tiny little dose. You're
Hmm.
not going to get optimally therapeutic at that dose, but something is better than nothing, especially when it's something big. So what they saw is that the kids that got 2,000 IU of vitamin D the first year of life, a 90% reduction in type 1 diabetes. They were able to prevent
Wow.
almost 90% of all type 1 diabetes.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, the kids never ended up getting schizophrenia. And it's like,
Wow.
so you kind of look at this, and now if you want to extrapolate sort of thing, it's like, well, if all autoimmune disease is the same, are you like doing a profound, prevention of all autoimmune disease? Cancer is a flip side of the same coin as autoimmune disease. Is that like really preventing tons of cancer? And when you think about brain stuff, really, we'd be better served also lumping all brain stuff into just brainy stuff, because it all comes from the same place. Geez, it prevents schizophrenia, you're kind of preventing all brainy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but here's it's just the first year of life. And they said, well, we don't care what you do the next 30 years. We're just going to give you this for
Wow.
1 year and see how it goes. So if you set the system early. So in the United States, and this is another one we're really trying
Oh,
to let everybody know this, because it's so easy, right? You can, go with the liquid while you're breastfeeding, put in the formula. It's super easy. Um, in the United States alone, by 2050, they expect to have 600,000 young people under the age of 20 with type 1 diabetes.
oh,
Now,
wow.
if everybody knew this by 2030 in the US, so we got 8 years to get the word out, we prevent 545,000 of those kids from getting type 1 diabetes. Over 500,000 out of the 600,000, we prevent them from getting diabetes by doing just one thing the
Mm.
first year of life that is so easy. Now, we probably give them better results if we actually tested the little kids' vitamin D levels, got them perfect, up to 70 to 90. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine how much we prevent with that, but just a
Mm.
little bit goes such a long way if you do it at younger ages, particularly because kids are so much easier to fix than adults. But also, if you really hit the big players, these really big central mechanisms, the prevention is not nearly as hard as we make it think.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. My audience will know that type 1 diabetes is very near and dear to my heart, as I have several family members living with it. And that's really powerful. And most people can do it. Vitamin D is not a very expensive supplement. It's not that the kid has to take, 29 different things. It's just
Right.
vitamin D. And you said 2,000 IU. That's it?
That's it. Most people
Wow.
need to be like 5,000 to 10,000 a day just to stay good
Yeah.
and to get them good. And usually it takes a little more to get them good. So 2,000 is really not much, but oh my goodness, what an impact.
Wow. And your 70 to 90 range, I like that because conventionally the limits of 30 or whatever the lab range is on the low end feels way too low to me. Is that what you target, 70 to 90 for vitamin D?
Yeah. When you look at these real big meta-analysis studies about vitamin D, and there's well over 11,000 articles on vitamin D in PubMed, kind of where all
Mm,
the scientific journals will
yeah,
live. Um, to cover every base that vitamin D can cover, usually want to be more than 75. It kind of
great.
covers all the bases. So different amounts, so you need to be over 30 to prevent rickets in kids, the disease of the legs where they bow
Yeah.
out. If every woman's vitamin D was above 60, we'd have 82% less breast cancer.
Oh,
Women's vitamin D is above 50 during pregnancy. It decreases risk of their child ever getting multiple sclerosis by 50%. So you get all these kind of things.
wow.
You put them all together, though, 75 or higher is kind of where you want to be to cover all the bases.
Oh, I love that. I'm a vehement vitamin D pusher. So I love hearing that. Thank you. Let's talk about some other food related triggers. We mentioned gluten already and just kind of assaults to our gut overall. There are a couple of controversial categories like lectins and nightshades that I get asked about often. And I believe for most people, we don't need to take these out 100% because there are some really healthy foods that have lectins and nightshades. In fact, almost all vegetables have some aspect of lectins. So it can be confusing for people to hear, oh, lectins are terrible, never eat them. Nightshades, you have to take them out altogether. And yet the flip side is it might be helpful for people who are in autoimmune flare up. So let me turn it over to you and you be the expert. Tell me what you think about this.
Well, I think one thing is, everybody's a unique individual. And
Mhm.
so it's really so important to treat every person. And this is where it kind of goes back. You treat the person, not the disease,
Yeah.
right? Kind of a thing. Because everybody's so unique. And so once your gut gets disrupted, you develop these food sensitivities. And there's really two different ways that foods can bother people. One is the immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Then you got delayed. So the
Yep.
immediate ones where people can figure this out, there are any tests we have because they go, geez, every time I eat this, I just don't feel well.
Right.
Okay. And skin testing is very unreliable for the immediate ones. It's great for cat dander pollen, but not so good for foods. People are better in the test. But then you have these delayed hypersensitivity reactions where the proteins in food, days or weeks, up to a month later, it'll whack you with inflammation, even if you haven't
Yes.
eaten it for an entire month because the proteins keep circling your system. So it's these delayed ones that are really sneaky and hard to figure out because they don't make you feel sick right away. So you keep eating them until all this inflammation builds and you start to feel really poorly. So this is where everybody with an autoimmune disease process has a delayed hypersensitivity reaction to the wheat proteins and cow's milk dairy.
Hmm.
Now, the autoimmune disease that drives autism, it's all animal milk products.
Mm.
Actually, cow and camel are the two worst. Goat
Oh,
and sheep
wow.
are next. I thought that was always kind of go. So every autoimmune disease has kind of unique aspects of it, but it's all kind of same. So ideally, what we ask people to do if they have an autoimmune disease, well, let's get rid of those two proteins and see how you feel.
Great.
If you 6 weeks later you come in, we're going to review your labs. If you go, oh my gosh, I'm already feeling so much better. This is crazy. They're the only ones bugging you. We don't have to test for other ones. Or if they come in and go, yeah, I'm kind of better, but not like great. We say, okay, there's other ones, and you can test for those. And it's a little finger prick test. The one we use, and actually people can order this online all by themselves nowadays too, is 96 different foods are tested. And you can
Okay.
pinpoint exactly which ones are bugging you sneaky and how much. And you get rid of them temporarily by getting rid of the foods that are creating inflammation every time you eat them. It really opens up this window of opportunity to fix everything, including you can eventually fix the foods that are bugging you. Now, there's a lot of ways to kind of play the odds. Hey, let's get rid of lectins, let's get rid of the nightshades, let's get rid of whatever it is. And if you hit it just right, you're going to get a profound impact. But oftentimes, what I find is people, do this, do that, and they don't quite get it. It's kind of like, well, I'm kind of better, but not like great. Is you're kind of playing the odds,
Yeah.
and if you don't quite get it right, you're not going to get the big bang for your effort. Where you can really test and really pinpoint how exactly which ones are bugging you, temporarily get rid of them, fix everything, and then you can actually fix the foods. And I kind of like that, better especially when people can now order the test themselves and then see the results themselves. And this is where, like, if in my book, I go through exactly what tests to run, including you can order your own blood work nowadays. You
Okay.
know, if you know what to
Yep.
order, you can order it. You go online, you go to the lab, they draw it for you, so really you can kind of do this on your own. But yeah, so I tend to like to be real person versus let's guess and get rid of this whole class of things like nightshades. But then again, you
Yes.
can kind of see some patterns on the food sensitivity test where you may see all these beans and taters being positive. You're like, that kind of looks like lectins, maybe,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And so maybe if we don't get this real big bang for effort, you're not getting better as fast as we expect. Well, then we might want to just get rid of lectins because we kind of see a
Right.
pattern that suggests that possibly, kind of a thing.
Understood. So I think I agree with 90% of what you said, and the 10% is a question. I completely agree that the person's experience, especially if it's an IgE or one of those immediate reactions, that experience is more valid than any test out there. So if you vomit every time you have milk, or you feel really awful when you have gluten or whatever, that's the most helpful. And I agree with treating the person, not just a category. So definitely paying attention to how we feel. The question is on the testing. So is the finger prick testing you're using, is that IgA with a blood spot?
I
And
tend to do just the IgG because the
IgG.
immediate ones are more the IgA, IgE,
Okay.
whereas the delayed hypersensitivity are more the IgG.
Okay.
And if you want to get in a heated conversation with a very traditional doctor, you want to bring up IgG testing. But once again, there's so much data out there. So, like, here's studies with people notoriously hard to treat, IBS, irritable bowel
Yeah.
syndrome, right? And here's a great study that took these two groups, and one of them they said, well, just keep doing what you're doing, and the other one, we're going to test your IgG food sensitivities, and we're going to ask you to get rid of those foods temporarily. Within 4 weeks, they're 40% better. Within 8 weeks, they're 80% better.
Yeah.
Notoriously hard to treat people, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you get rid of the foods that are bugging you sneaky, it
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
Yeah. I want to agree so much. And I run food intolerance testing out of my practice, and I encourage people to do it, for sure. I don't feel that there is a test that is fully diagnostic, because there are so many mechanisms, IgA, IgA, whatever. And some things that we just, frankly, I don't think have testing for. Like, some people might come up clear on all these and they still know they feel awful with kidney beans. And I'm like, well, trust your body instead of the paper. So I just don't feel like we have a test that is the perfect, here is your list of yes foods and no foods. And when we do, I'll be excited. But it seems like you feel we have that. Is that true?
Well, you got to get rid of the ones that are bugging you, obviously. You
Yeah.
want to get rid of the ones that are bugging you sneaky. But
Yeah.
you're right, no test is perfect. You always got to put the history and the person together with the test. And so we'll find people that, don't really show super positive on IgG testing for wheat. And
Yeah.
then we do the blood test, they're like floored celiac disease,
Yeah.
right? That kind of stuff. And so you really got to put the person and the test together for
Yes.
interpretation. Sometimes on these food sensitivity tests, the delayed ones, everything comes up super positive.
And
But
that's leaky gut,
but
right?
nobody can be positive for nobody has every food bugging them. But it's
Right.
like, oh my goodness, your gut is so messed up. Your body's
Yes.
kind of freaking out about anything. We just gotta get rid of the ones that, and then we go, well, let's just get rid of the ones that are biggest offenders.
Yes.
Uh, they rate them from like 0 to 4. So we might say, oh, just get rid of the 3s and 4s.
Yeah.
Because you can't be sensitive to everything. But yeah, so this is where you got to put the history and the patient together with the testing. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. Very helpful. Well, we're running up on the end of time, and this is a funny question to ask, for a summary, because I know you could talk for 8 years about this, but I'd love to close with the impact of stress on autoimmunity. I believe they're so connected, and I'm curious to hear any thoughts you have to share about that.
So whether it's emotional stress, physical stress, spiritual stress, it's all just stress to the body.
Yeah.
And the body is built for intermittent stress, but not 24-hour day, 7-day a week stress. So these
Hmm.
physical stressors, such as the infections that are such big drivers of this that it can easily be tested in a blood test, a poop test. Um, they create stress, physical stress, but then because they're 24/7, they lock you in place. And then cortisol, the stress hormone, gets locked in the stress mode, and then you can't fix anything. And then it's just one thing after another after another. So as you get rid of the infections, we love to use something called pH structured silver solution. It'll get rid of any infection, no matter what kind it is. It
Hmm.
also, though, gets rid of inflammation. It helps damaged tissues heal through
Wow.
epigenetics, turning on good genes and turning off bad genes in the cells so they can heal. Getting rid of the offending foods, the vitamin deficiencies, all these kind of things. Then you're in a position to reset cortisol. But cortisol is so stuck for so long. Cortisol doesn't know how to reset. So this is
Hmm.
where you got to do at least some kind of relaxation. We kind of say at least gives 2 minutes a day of some kind of deep breathing, meditation, relaxation, get out in nature, repetitive prayer, because we get rid of all these physical stressors. We go, okay, cortisol, time to reset, time to get into chillax mode. And
Yeah.
cortisol goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like,
Right.
no, the relaxation mode. And cortisol like, I haven't been there forever. I don't know what you're talking. That's
Right.
right. We got to teach you. So you got a
Yes.
couple minutes a day is so vitally important for ultimately resetting that cortisol. And without that, I tend to find that's a real big game changer. If you're not doing a couple minutes a day, you can
Yes.
get rid of all the physical stressors. Cortisol will never fully reset. And then you're like, crud, where's all this bang for my effort? And we go, I
That's
know
right.
such a big one that gets missed off. It's kind of like the infections. The infections, the cortisol tend to get missed by a lot of folks.
Yes.
They call cortisol the forgotten hormone. That's just kind of
Mm.
easy for most people to forget, but it's actually the only hormone that we would not be able to live without. You die
Yeah.
without cortisol, Addison's disease,
Mm.
where you can feel pretty crummy with almost no thyroid hormone, but you're not quite
You won't
dead.
die.
And
Yeah.
everybody forgets the cortisol part, but that is super vitally important.
Wow. I love that explanation that your body just doesn't know how to tap into relaxation mode unless you train it. And
Mhm.
it's something that I've talked a lot about on previous episodes. I was not the meditative type. I thought that was a waste of time and all of that. And now I think today is day 1020 something on my streak. Once I started several years ago, I just can't stop. I won't stop because it's so beneficial.
It is. It just so, and this kind of goes back to it seems so easy, almost like too easy, like the 2000 IU of vitamin D. It almost seems like too easy. But if
Yeah.
you know the symptom, there's a great Harvard study on epigenetics and meditation about
Mm.
flipping genes on and off the right way that I talk about in my experts course. I talk about in my course for self-care course that about meditation and flipping genes the right way and how profoundly impactful that is. And you're like, oh my gosh, their study only took 8 weeks, and their study only took like 3 times a week. And you're like,
Wow.
crazy. Really?
That's
That does it that
incredible.
fast? And you're like, yep, it'll do it that fast and that powerfully. The body's
Oh,
so good at healing, you don't have to just get nudge it in the right direction, and then it just runs.
yes. Oh, I love that. And that's a perfect way to jump off. I know people will want to learn so much more from you, and you have so much more to share. So let the audience know how they can learn more from you.
But you can always go to my website. It's drdavidbilstrom.com. And on there, we have links to all our social media platforms. Please consider following and sharing. It links to our YouTube page. I have
Great.
over 150 different videos. Everyone references a scientific article because this is
Amazing.
not some one person's opinion. This is the science. I think that's very
Thank you.
important. And you can access the different courses that are available. I'm super excited. I'm partnering with the Academy of Leadership Science Switzerland out of Zurich, who does all these wonderful educational programs through Europe, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. And in November, we're starting programs to teach people how to do this themselves in all those parts of the world. Of course,
Wow.
you can access it from the United States and Canada as well, but really starting to get this momentum to change the way it's done
Oh,
wide
I
here.
literally have goosebumps. That's amazing. You're making such an impact. And we will link to all of those things, your website, social media, the courses, everything that anyone would want to know in the show notes. So scroll on down from where you're listening to this and get those links, learn a lot more from Dr. Bilstrom. And thank you so much to you, Dr. Bilstrom, for being here. I appreciate all of your wisdom, and I know we changed a lot of people's lives today.
Thank you, Megan. It's been my pleasure.
Of course.